Am I live? Check one. Am I talking? It looks like I am. Hey, everybody. It's Mike Meyers doing his Monday, Wednesday, Friday Coronavirus Ask Me Anything. The goal of this live stream is to provide those of us who are isolated because of the coronavirus an opportunity to continue our studies on the CompTIA certifications that Total Seminars concentrates on. In particular, it's going to be IT Fundamentals, A+, Net Plus, and Security Plus. We can certainly go beyond that, but that's my personal skill area, so tend to want to stick with that. I'm also glad to talk about any technical issues that you might have as well. Sound is good. Thank you, Dave Rush. You have no idea how much I appreciate that. Today is going to be an interesting day. What day? It's Wednesday. Okay, man. I'm in that part of my life where the calendar, like in the movies where the calendar goes flip, 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 flip. So we've got a couple of interesting questions. Didn't get a lot in the mail, but today volume shadow copy is definitely going to be talked about. Man, am I glad I did not answer that question right there because things change so much. But other than that, I am open to your questions. Remember, the goal of this is Ask Mike Anything. So this is driven by you asking me questions. So you can ask me questions a lot of different ways. You can just go ahead and type them into the live chat if you want. That's one way to do it. Equally, if you want to, you can send me an email. And if you want to send me an email, here's my contact information. And you can send me an email detailing your questions. I did get a few questions, so if you're waiting for me to answer your question via email, I did get a couple of small ones, and I definitely will be answering those today. But anyway, I got two different emails there. Either one works equally well. Don't send them to both because then I have to deal with it twice. Then if you're a gamer, I am Senior Pepe. I've had a bunch of people join me on Steam. Too bad I'm not playing anything right now. This is my office number. We are also isolating right now, so unfortunately, if you absolutely have to get a hold of me for some crazy reason, I am available through that number, but you got to go through the screeners. And when in doubt, just Google the word DesWeds, and I will find you. So let's go ahead and get started. Keep in mind we do this every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 2 o'clock Central Daylight Time. We go for either 2 hours or until the questions run out. So it's really up to you guys. If we have a slower day, no big deal. We'll just end it a little early. Otherwise, we will go to 4 o'clock. I am absolutely glad to do that. Also keep in mind that, Scott, I'm assuming we have some, we got some specials today. So I'm not sure what they are. I'm going to let Scott just go ahead and type those up real quick. And we'll figure out what that is. Hang on. Forgot to turn on Teams. Yes, Total Seminars is a Teams company. Nope. Okay. Anyway, I'm sure Scott's on top of that. And so just watching the live chat for whatever today's special is. Keep in mind, we have some really good deals here. There we go. Thank you, Scott. So we have 50% off Total Seminars A+, Net Plus, Security Plus Super Bundles, which is let me turn down my phone. Sorry about that. It's Scott. And so there are Super Bundles, which is our videos, our total simulations, and our total tester test bank. And if you just want practice tests, then you can get those as well. That's all of our practice tests, and that goes beyond simply the ones we're talking about, so CASP or anything like that. We have those too. And so all you got to do is go to www.total7.com, buy what you want to buy, and then at checkout, just type in MMLive626. That is this week's code. And you get stuff at 50% off, which is ridiculous. Our prices are insane. I'm like of all, I'm going to get snotty here a little bit, but of all the good practice question companies out there, we're already the cheapest. So add in the fact that we're cutting at 50% off. You'd be nutsy not to take advantage of these deals. They're just crazy good deals. So the other thing I want to do is I want to concentrate on questions that are being asked first this time. So if you got questions, start typing them in now. I know traditionally I want to do the email questions and things like that, but I feel that there's too much delay. And sometimes it takes me a while. I'm scrolling through and I'm missing things that were talked about. Andrew Hutz, hey Mike, did you get my email with the resume attachment? I did. Haven't looked at it yet, but I swear it and promise I'll look at it. Andrew, you want me to talk about it here online, or do you want me to just send you an email back? Type in something and let me know how you want me to handle that, because it might be an interesting learning thing for just about anybody. I am not a resume expert, kids, okay? So don't look at me as the ultimate authority on this, but I've certainly hired a lot of folks and I've looked at a lot of resumes. And Andrew, again, if you just want me to answer you privately, I'll just email you back. But it would be kind of cool. You know, it's whatever you feel comfortable with. Completely up to you, sir. In fact, don't even type it in there. I'm reading. I get sidetracked a little bit. Just email me back. Let me know. We can do it either Monday, but I'll have your answer over the weekend for sure. I am going a little bit out of town this weekend. I'm going to head out to the Guadalupe River down here in Texas, and we're going to be doing. Are we going to be kayaking or canoeing?
It's up to you.
Oh, so I'm not one to sit in an inner tube. For those of you who are not from the States, there is this thing we do, mainly in southern United States, called tubing, where you take an old inner tube for an automobile and you get in your swimsuit, you plop in there and you just go down the river. It is been done for 100 years down here in Texas, do it in Missouri. It's always a lot of fun. But I'm also really good at canoeing. And I don't get a chance to canoe on moving water very much. When you live in the Gulf Coast, we don't have much in the way of rivers. We have bayous. So I'm kind of excited about this. So just heading out to Austin, Texas area, what they call the hill country. What else is happening in my life? So I had somebody tell me today, go, Mike, you're losing your face. And I looked in the mirror, I'm like, oh, maybe I actually am. Yeah, so I'm almost 30 pounds down, guys. I'm very excited. And I can barely move. I bench pressed 145 pounds today. Not once, not 10 times, but 60 times. So right now I'm like, grr. You know, I used to be a not a bodybuilder, but a weightlifter back in the day. In fact, me and Scott Jernigan used to weight lifts 10 years ago, Scott, more than that. And so it's kind of fun to get back on the big iron, you know, doing all that fun stuff. Okay, thank you, Andrew. I will go over it on Monday. So let's all thank Andrew. Big round of applause to Andrew Hutz, who is willing to let us look at his resume. And I'll tell everybody his phone number and address. I'm kidding. I'll block all that out, Andrew. Don't panic. But we'll have a little talk about resume and resume building. Again, with the understanding that I, Mike Meyers, am not a professional resume maker. Do we understand that? The only thing I can tell you is that I've hired lots of folks and I've looked at lots of resumes, and I'll tell you what would impress me. All right. And it won't be just me pontificating. I mean, if anybody else wants to chime in, we can do that too. Hey, Elaine, there she is. Hey, Wissa, have you ever heard of the Saco River in Maine?
I do know the Saco River very well.
All right, so this is Elaine Batzler is going to be coming down, and she was saying that they do tubing up in Maine. So thank you, Elaine. I had no idea. Very cool. All right. So Elaine Wissa says you should be kayaking it. I'm not going to get in the middle of that. So what else is happening? I think that's it in terms of interesting personal stuff. Oh, I have sent well, not many. I've sent 2 different attempts to contact Network Chuck. And so I did that all Wednesday and then yesterday morning. Monday and yesterday morning. And I have not heard back from him. He had actually asked me back in April if I would do one of his shows. So we're going to do a little cross-pollination here, but I do want to talk to him first and verify that he's up for it. He's a good guy, and I think it'll be fun. It'll be interesting what we talk about. Okay. Yeah, so Andrew, man, you know, the fun part about lifting weights, you know, just free weights, you know, big iron, is, you know, just all that muscle memory comes back, you know, and all that. It's like, rah. You get up and you're like, rah. A lot of testosterone flying around. All right, so let's take a look at some questions we have here. Okay, Nigel, thanks for letting him know that I was trying to contact him. I just sent, I contacted him on LinkedIn, and I contacted him on, Well, just the email that was on his YouTube channel. So hopefully that'll pan out. All right. Let's get on the questions right away here. Brendan S., man. You guys got an earthquake? Wee. Dr. Quinn's here. Alan Dugan's here. Tulwood, of course, is here. No, I'm just looking for, I'm digging through questions. Everybody's just saying hello, which is always good. Good, good, good. Y'all are like a little... And yes, Elaine, I do see you. Wonderful. Thank you so much for showing up. So Elaine and I were actually talking on the phone when we were setting all this up, and it's like, what do we want to talk about? So I think that you guys, you know, we've got a number of weeks. Elaine, it's like 3 weeks before you show up, right? So if you guys have questions for Elaine, I mean, you know, Elaine has been working at a secondary level here in the U.S. for, Elaine, I'm not going to say how many years you've been at it, a while. She's got a lot of experience in terms of how to, you know, dealing with administration, running programs, and she's a pretty good crackerjack tech in and of herself. Although I know I got in trouble with this, so I'm gonna retract. Elaine's like, Mike, I am not a CCNA goddess. I mean, so stop saying that to everybody. So, but I can assure you that Elaine's comfortable with Cisco certifications, and so that might be an angle that we could cover as well. So, hello, Spewy. Yeah, Spewy. Yeah, Spewy earned her nickname today. I mean, when I'm going to stop talking about it. I'll start getting crabby. That cat is disgusting. So just leave it at that. All right, Nigel. Hey, Mike, got in contact with Kathy. Oh, Nigel, that's right. Kathy's daughter is in, I thought she was in New Zealand, not Australia, but okay, cool. David Smith, best practices for using network share NTFS permissions together. Ooh, David Smith, what an interesting question. Network shares and NTFS permissions. The problem I have, I mean, I'm literally deciding on the fly. Do I want to do it right now or do I want to wait? I'm going to tell you what, David, that's a big topic that takes a long time. And I probably can just do it, but I would rather hang on to that one. Here comes my Monday list already, huh? All right. So I'm going to do an NTFS permissions. You got to be careful with combining the concept of NTFS permissions and network shares. NTFS permissions, there's one thing I will say, and this confuses people a lot. NTFS works perfectly fine on one computer. You only need one computer. You know, the idea behind NTFS, when it was first developed and still with it today, is that you can log in lots of people into a single computer and you can set NTFS permissions on individual users. NTFS doesn't really care if you're sitting at the keyboard at that computer or if you're on the other side of the office trying to access through the network. If you have a valid account on that system, whether it's network shared or not, remember, the only thing a network share does is allows people to access your shared resource remotely. That's all that is. And it's actually a throwback to the old ancient, it was, God, what was that called? Microsoft LAN Manager, which was back before Windows was invented. And it's a very ancient way of doing things. There's a lot of settings in network share that don't really make any sense anymore. And I'm not even sure why they're still there, to be honest with you. Things like full control and read-only and stuff, which you'll see in a network share. Microsoft best practices has just set that to full control. And then you actually set the NTFS permissions. This is what gets people in trouble, especially if they don't have a domain controller. Say you got just 4 or 5 Windows 10 systems, and you want to share a folder because there's some Word documents in it or something like that. And so you share the folder, which is great, but if that person doesn't have an account on that system, it's as though like somebody's trying to log on to the system without a username and password. It's just not going to let anything happen. So this is where you always get into trouble with like Windows home networks. You see this a lot, and where you have to like literally make the same username and password. Okay, but we'll get into that. So I'm going to do NTFS permissions and network shares. We'll do that Monday. David Smith, will that work for you if I do it Monday? All right, I'm going to wait. Dave will type something in here in a minute. Brendan S. What version of Microsoft does not allow for an in-place upgrade? I don't know. Scott, any thoughts on that? I just assume they all do. Unless there's some weird version that I'm not familiar with. Pretty sure Enterprise does. I'm pretty sure Windows Pro does. Windows Home certainly does. I've done it a zillion times. So Brendan S., I'm going to say all of them. Although, Brendan, you know what you're talking about, so it always makes me nervous when you ask me questions, man, because it's like, hang on, Scott Jernigan's typing. That's a good sign. Network Mage. Hi, Mike. Does disabling NetBIOS on a PC increase network security a bit? No, not really. I mean, it might. I'm trying to think. I'm pretty sure on Windows 10, if you're on a domain, NetBIOS is already disabled. You don't need it. And everything just goes through symmetric message blocks, port 445. Scott and I are working on your question there, Brendan. It might cut down on some broadcasting. So if you had a really populated network and stuff like that, it might help a little bit. The other problem, though, is that if you're not on a domain, you often still lean on that NetBIOS, the old ports 137, 138, 139. I mean, there's always just some old piece of software or something that still leans on it. So I would be very reticent to take that out. What is the best way to harden a wired network other than stateful firewall? Is there anything else? Well, sure. So a stateful firewall is going to be your network firewall. You definitely want a host firewall. Make sure that your individual Windows firewalls are turned on. Remember, the network firewall protects you from the evils of the internet, but the host-based firewall, the firewall that's built onto your Windows system, protects you from your own idiocy, right? You've clicked on something you shouldn't have, and it's trying to phone out and stuff like that, and that's where that firewall comes into play. Dang, that'd be another interesting. Let me try to talk about host-based firewalls. Those would be the two big things. Wired networks are fantastic because you can't get to them. If I'm trying to penetrate into a network, usually the first place I'm going to look for is their wireless. And especially if I can sit out in the parking lot with a Pringles can directional antenna and get to the WAP. Until WPA3 comes out, I can certainly get on the wireless. But yeah, that might be a little tricky past. And it just depends on the network. If you have a domain, it would be very tricky for me. But those are the two biggies. On a wired network, make sure you have a good, and not just a what did you say? Stateful. You want a stateful and a stateless firewall. That can be very important to put in a stateful firewall that blocks stuff. Man, there are about 300 different websites on there that are like, what are the common ACLs that we see for routers? And just type in sample ACL for Soho in Google, and you're going to get 1,000 examples. I don't have one that I particularly love, but there's a lot of them that are out there that can be very, very helpful. Yeah. So again, a true wired network with only one connection out to the internet, it's a pretty robust thing. I mean, the only place I could get in, obviously, would be through the router, right? Or either that or I kick in your door, which people have been known to do. But those would be the biggies. No Jaquez. Oh, I see what Scott's saying. You cannot in-place upgrade from 32-bit to... Oh, that's true. Yeah, you're right. So that is the big limitation. Scott's adding, I think he's agreeing with what I'm saying, but adding to it, and that is you cannot in-place upgrade from 32-bit to 64-bit with anybody. So if you got a 32-bit Windows Home, then you want to go to 64-bit Windows Home, it's a clean install. Hey, Elaine, you're a kayak instructor? Hey, might be one of our extracurriculars we do while you're down here. See, that's a nice thing we could do, Elaine, because we're like outdoors and 6 feet away from everybody. No, Jacques. Hi, Mike. I'm thinking about taking the Network Plus. What type of programs do you use on your course for the labs? GNS3, Packet Tracer? I don't use either of those, although they're both fine tools. I have a listing node called Mike's Cool Tools. Go to www.totalsem.com and look up my cool tools. If you're already talking about stuff like GNS3 and Packet Tracer, I doubt that I would have any tools that you don't know about, but go ahead and check them out. I mean, they're all pretty common. They're all freeware or shareware. Wireshark is in there, stuff like that. But no, I don't have anything particularly special. He had a live session on Monday. Okay, thank you, Nigel. Again, I got that. All right, here comes it. I really wish they could fix this awful scrolling thing. Kegs have weight. Thanks, buddy. Matt H. Yo, Mike. Yo, Matt H. What have you heard from people who have been taking the CompTIA exams online? Is it a good experience? Yeah, Matt, it seems to be going pretty well. We've only had one person who really didn't do it, and I don't remember who that person is, and I don't want to make any accusations. But if you try to plug a USB drive in during the test, it'll just go down, and you will not get your money back. You have to go through a little pre-check. They want to see what the room is that you're in. They don't want to have a big wall full of answers on one side, so you got to take pictures. You need a relatively fast internet connection. Obviously, you need a good mic. You want a good camera. But other than that, yeah, it's been pretty straightforward. Even the few people who've told me, in the middle of the exam when it crashed, they were able to come back up and pick right up where they left off and stuff like that. If anybody has any more, I know a number of you guys have taken it online. If anybody wants to add to what I just said to Matt H., feel free. Yeah, no, Nigel, I like Network Chuck enough to invite him into my world, so I think he's pretty good too. So, yeah, listen, I guess he's technically competition. I don't see him as competition. I don't. He's just another brother nerd, and I like other nerds. It's all good. Okay, Dave, so you're going to be doing it under a domain, which is good. Makes your life a lot easier. So we can talk about that. Now, the one thing I'm going to have to warn you, I will talk about this, but there are books this thick on NTFS permissions, and I'm not going to drill down that far. We don't need to. Most of it is pretty common sense stuff, but we can talk about it. I've got a Windows Server system here. We'll spin it up and throw a couple of things in there. Geraldine Berner. Geraldine, I wanted to talk to you too, man. I got to tell you, Geraldine, you're in the UK, right? Please tell me you're in the UK. I hate it when I get this stuff wrong. I have made, remember last week there were some questions about getting work and stuff like that, and I have made a number. I guess I don't have a zillion connections. I mean, 3 different people I knew over there in the UK, like IT instructors and such, and it was very frustrating. I mean, really frustrating. About, I tried to get the answer to one simple question. Do most schools get their students jobs? That's all I asked. And the answer is static and sidestepping and all that. I said something that I shouldn't have. So I've been kind of frustrated about what's happening over in the UK in terms of getting people work and stuff like that. And yeah, unfortunately, Geraldine, Skill set is here in the good old US of A. But I hadn't forgotten about you. That's all I'm trying to say. Okay, anyway, you have a question. In mobile devices, phones and tablets, sure, does it not have a CMOS battery because it has a mobile lithium battery? Is that right? I don't know, and I can also tell you that that could vary a lot. So I'm going to start with the easy answer and say I don't know, but then I will now speculate, and I would say that, I mean, it certainly has firmware on it, and, you know, I've never actually had to go in. Well, I have actually. Whoops, did I break anything? I just hit a bunch of keys. Is everybody still there? So I've gone in and, like, flashing the ROMs on to open up Android box, and I'm not aware of there being a old school CMOS type battery. Is it because they have a regular battery? That I'm not sure about, because you would be thinking, you know, really these phones just never go down. I got to think about that for a minute. So I have let Android phones completely die, like DED, dead die. And then I recharge them and they come back and they still have the date and the time and all that. Now, is this a thing where they reboot and acquire all that information somehow? There would almost have to be some kind of, or there would have to be, Geraldine, I don't know. We'll just leave it like that. I'm going to see if the brain trust can come up with anything on that for me. Just writing it down. You guys are on good questions today. I'm actually all excited about doing NTFS. I love NTFS, and it's like a lost art for some reason. Small battery on mobile. Cool. So Scott's telling me that there's no timekeeping battery in phones, and they just sync time with the carrier. So if they're not connected to the carrier, there's no time services. They get the, yeah, okay, so my first speculation, Scott's agreeing with. They can get the current time out. Well, of course, Scott, now what I want to do is take a phone, yank the SIM out, let the battery die all the way, and then see what happens. We got some old tablet laying around here. All right, so Geraldine, here's me. Always good for half an answer at least. Nigel, Mike, I know you said you're not an expert at resumes, but I will send you mine. Sure. Nigel, send me yours too. And again, when you send it to me, let me know if you want me to talk about it online. If not, it's no big deal. And I'll keep all your addresses and phone numbers, email addresses hidden. Hi, Mike. Would you consider making a tutorial of taking the CompTIA online? I've never thought about that, Matt. Sure, I could do that. I'm a little bit nervous about what CompTIA would let me do and not do. I don't know if I'd make a video on it, but I could definitely discuss it more, like jumping through all the hoops. And like showing me where to go on Pearson VUE and all that stuff. You know, because I still haven't done it myself, so it might just be fun for me to document my own experience. The CompTIA online experience. It would really be the OnVue, ONVUE experience, because they're the guys who actually View Prometric puts those out. Matt, I will keep it in serious consideration. How's that sound? TS, gainfully employed, man. Well done, sir. Got to get out there working, man. David Tinsley, volume shadow copies in Windows. We're going to do volume shadow copy today. Got my backup drive and everything ready just to do that. David Smith had no problems taking his A+. Oh man, as opposed to a 50-minute drive and no talking. Yeah, I heard about that too. Nigel, Mike, here's a good question for you. Because we are continuously learning in IT, I have a learning difficulty and I am an incredibly slow learner. Would that stop me from being in IT? No. I mean, if you have something that you're actually diagnosed on, like, you've been somewhere and you've got doctors, something that diagnoses something, even like when you're taking certifications, they'll give you extra time, they'll give you a reader if you need it, they'll give you a writer, someone to write for you. There's all kinds of stuff like that. In terms of, now if this is just self-diagnosed, my only challenge I would say to you is that I'm a really slow learner too. Generally, and to be honest with you, I am. I don't feel that I learn as fast as a lot of guys. But as a great president of the United States once, is that I've seen a million geniuses, but I can outwork all of them. And so if you have a learning difficulty, especially if it's self-diagnosed, there are some self-help things you might want to consider in terms of, is it reading? Is it memory retention? I mean, there are tools to help you with that kind of stuff. But no, it's not going to stop you. And besides, Nigel, you ask good questions, so I know you're a sharp guy. Didi Obamo. As an entry-level tech, what are the 5 basic things? 5? Where did you come up with 5? That's a Mike Meyers thing. The 3 things you need to know. The 4 things what are the 5 things that you'd be expected to do daily? Entry level, show up, which is a shockingly hard thing to do for entry-level IT techs. Be professional. There's no place for snowflakes when you're, when you're at the entry level. Patience and kindness and stuff like that, putting up with other people's idiocy. Be ready to learn. And by saying when I say be ready to learn, one of the biggest challenges I have in life is that people will start talking to me and I think I know what they're talking about and I'll just cut them off. So when I say be ready to learn, you have to learn how to learn. And don't be a nerd, don't be an Asperger-y guy, and be in there. Number 4, show incredible enthusiasm. Be the most enthusiastic version of yourself there is. I don't care what the job is. If you come in with enthusiasm, that's going to be good. And boy, I could probably go to 20 on this. Know the company that you're working for. Understand what they're doing, even if it isn't directly related to your job. Understand the managerial structure. Know the name of not just your boss, but a few bosses up there. Ask questions about that stuff. And I guess the last one I would throw in there is, that's part of being enthusiastic, is don't let the burnouts get you down. I don't care what job you're in. There's always, in IT in particular, there's always some person in there who's like, rah, 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 and, why are you doing that, and blah, blah, blah. And, geez, Dee, why, and just ignore those people and move forward. Nigel Mage, I just learned today that CompTIA has a CE course you can take to renew a cert versus having to retake the test again. Yeah, they do, but Network Mage, honestly, if you're going to be going that route, keep in mind that you can get a lot of continuing education units so many different ways. Taking almost any kind of course that's even remotely related to IT. Show up at the CompTIA conference every year. It's usually in a fun place. That's a good way to do it. A lot of times taking another CompTIA certification, like if you have A+, and then you take Net+, that I'm pretty sure that refreshes your A+ as well. Anyway, CompTIA, www.comptia.org just they got on their search within their page, just type in continuing education, and they've got quite a program in there that offers all kinds of different ways to do that. You got to remember, for me, guys, don't break things. That's true, Elaine. Won't argue with that. Where were we at? I lost where I was at. I forgot. I forgot. Damn. Oh well, it'll come back to me. Okay, Tolowit. Why would someone want to install and use the Windows subsystem for Linux 2 that came with the latest Windows 10 update? Is it in there? I didn't see that. David Smith, practice Linux commands. That's true. You no longer have to install like Ubuntu in a virtual machine to get to that. The Tolowit, that is used aggressively by coders, is a big place, and system admins. Like for example, if you're writing code, Michael Smyer is like our head coding guy, and he lives on his Mac. He's got a big old, Mac system, and he loves it because he can go to a command prompt, go to a terminal, and he's got basically native Linux / BSD Unix or whatever the heck it is. And so that allows him to connect to a lot of tools that really don't exist in the Windows environment. So from a programmer standpoint, to have that subsystem in there is a very, very good thing. I am personally nervous about that because Windows has been ignored, in my opinion, as a software development platform for like people making websites and stuff. And for Microsoft to put this in now, so late in time, is a question mark. I've just seen Microsoft do this with so many different technologies in so many different ways, and it usually doesn't work out for them. Actually, Michael Smyer would probably be the guy. I'm not sure if he's on today or not, but he might be a good source. We'll see if Michael Smyer's on, if he could pop up. But that would be one of the big things. E. White, I'm burnt out on help desk. So am I a burnout? Well, actually, E. White, that is a very important point, and that is something that we need to think about. You can be burnt out, but not act like a burnout. But you can still maintain enthusiasm or at least a good attitude. Don't be contagious to other people. If you don't like your job, don't go puking that out to the rest of the people around you. Especially you get some young kid coming in, it's his first job and he's excited. He'll figure out the hard stuff on his own eventually. Don't add it to him on the first week. But also, E. White, it might be time for you to start getting that resume out, looking for more work. And I guess because you're here, you already are, so I'm probably just preaching to the choir on that one. Azads, dear Mike, I am working towards get certified in CompTIA A, network, security, CySA initially, and along with them, the messenger, learning Linux. What kind of job should I expect to get, please? Well, the most important thing you need to understand is that no certification will ever get you a job, okay? Sorry, guys, but if you think you're going to get a bunch of certifications and then suddenly get a job, you are not doing this right. The only thing a certification is ever going to do for you is that when there's a big stack of resumes for a particular job, it puts yours towards the top. That's it. Then it's not just for CompTIA A+, Net+. That's for CISSP or CCIE or anything. It doesn't matter. So, Azads, you've got me nervous because you're sitting here, you're going to take this and this and this and this and then go get a job? No, sir. Number one, go get a job. Here in the United States, there's a bunch of computer sales jobs, all kinds of stuff that will take, especially these days, almost any warm body they can get. I hate to admit this, but I go on this website called Reddit, and I was looking in the Houston, r/Houston subreddit, and there's another one, Tech. Scott Jernigan knows Reddit better than me, and they're literally pouring out all of these companies who are currently hiring, and they're all remote positions, and it's all IT. And it's an ugly list, and there's a number of these lists around. dig, find it yourself. I'm not going to hand it to you. But what you need to be doing, Azads, is get a job now. Go to work. You love IT. I hope you love IT because that's why you're here. You don't need an A+ to get a job. Will it put your name towards the top of a stack? Yes. But I get nervous. I mean, Azad, are you super rich and can afford to take a year and a half off of your life to do this? No, I'm assuming you're not. Go to work. Get a job. Certifications are done on nights and weekends, folks. Or unless you get maybe you take a week off and go to and just pound it, either on your own or through like a boot camp or something like that. Hopefully you have a few certifications that you pay for on your own, but you get in with a good company and you don't pay for any more certifications. And that's part of the thing. It's part of the negotiation when people are getting a job. It's like, hey, do you pay for certifications? You'd be shocked how many companies are like, oh yeah, sure, because you asked. So Azads, go get a job. Go to work, okay? But I don't have any experience. There are zillions, well, at least here in the United States, there's tons of people hiring. And in fact, the need for techs right now via coronavirus, because all these new remote people are needed, is huge. And man, you guys are like, where? I can't find it on Reddit. I just saw it today. And it was just a big old, I think it was in r/Houston, yeah. So I don't know. I can only talk about Houston on something like that. Oh, there you go. Michael Smyer. Tolowit, there's your answer, brother. There you go, David Smith. Burned out, moving on. That's the secret. The thing that a lot of people don't understand is that, and again, I got to say U.S.-centric on this. I'm sorry, but here in the U.S., you get a job, like your first job, if it lasts 6 months, that's great. You usually immediately start looking for another job. It is very common for me to see somebody who's new, like less than 5 years, maybe even less than 10 years if it's the right kind of gig, and to see that they've had a lot of jobs. I know a lot of people on resumes tell you, if you jump around a lot, that's a bad thing. That is not true for baby IT techs. It's almost kind of assumed. Yeah, go get a job, Azads. Azads, where do you physically live? Are you in the USA? Are you overseas? I remember seeing you before. You got it. Where are you from, man? Todd's Tech Hub. I did part-time help desk work while in college before graduating. Been in the IT field for about 4 years now. About to get my Net Plus. Crossing my fingers. Finally rise out of the help desk. Yeah. Oh, you're in the UK, man. Sorry, Zods. I'm very frustrated about what's happening in the UK now. Why won't these people call me back and tell me what's happening? But that is the beauty. Help desk is often a good starting spot, but moving past that. A lot of times, especially like if you're doing help desk, you're usually doing help desk for a particular product, right? And so a lot of times that's where the first level of techs really start to come from. Developers, all that stuff comes out of the help desk. Depends on the company, but if you're working for a company that's providing help desk for 24/7 security, some cloud-based AWS product. That's where you get in the door. You work the midnight to 8 shifts for a while, and you get yourself moving up. But then you're the one who starts seeing the new job openings that are open up within the company, and you move up within the company. So a lot of times people are in help desk. They're like, I got to get out of here. And I was like, well, and that is often the case. I'm not saying that isn't the case in a lot of situations. But a lot of times, especially with in-house help desk, the answer is stay with the company, just get out of the help desk and move up in the process. Again, it really is different. G. Singh, in the UK, it's incredibly difficult to get help desk with just an A+. G. Singh, I am sorry to hear that. And I guess what we're running into is a little bit of geopolitics, which I like to avoid. It's just like, G. Singh, if you had bilateral symmetry and knew how to take a shower and could talk well and have basic analytical skills, if you magically showed up here in Houston, Texas today, I'd have you working by 5 o'clock this afternoon. Okay, maybe not quite that fast, but almost certainly within a week. David Smith, can you briefly explain UTM appliances? I am confused by UTM/firewall, or can they be the same appliances? They absolutely can be the same appliance. In small offices, they always are. The only real difference is that whereas a single appliance, let's just say you start to scale up in more of like our enterprise environment, these types of tools work together to handle. UTM stands for Unified Threat Management. So instead of having just a firewall, instead of just having an intrusion protection system, instead of just having a proxy device, you can put all these together in a single device, very commonly done. And but a lot of times when you see like the little home office type stuff, which is what so many of us see, these home routers, that's not really UTM, although some can be. It's just their ability to work with other stuff. Where if you're in an enterprise where you have 4 or 5 edge routers and you have intrusion protection systems with sensors everywhere and all that, that would be more UTM than me. So hopefully that answers this. It's not, David, it's not a big complicated thing, nor is it some perfect law of physics. You understand? You're stumbling into a fuzzier area. Anybody can build a home router that has, intrusion protection on it, and that has a firewall, and maybe, I don't know, proxy server. That's pretty rare, but you could, and they can call it UTM. You understand what I'm saying? So it's not like there is a national organization of UTM people who define that kind of stuff. It's a wide open, Wild West world out there, brother. Azaz, I'm in my mid-30s now. Lost your business to COVID-19. Azaz, I'm very sorry to hear that, man. These are tough times. That's why I'm here. You hold a postgraduate degree in business. Back in IT. First of all, you're in your mid-30s. You're a baby. You're a child. So that doesn't count. I'm going to get back on my soapbox for one more thing. One of the things that I find very frustrating with people looking for work is that they're always telling me how old they are. And I can assure you that very few companies are against hiring old people. What they're against is hiring older people who act like older people. Some little 21, 22-year-old is not going to have a spouse and 3 kids. They're going to be willing to move. They're going to be willing to work the late hours. They're willing to go to the bar and hang out with the boss. They're the ones who are willing to shift gears. They're the ones who are willing to work 2 hours extra per day to help somebody out. And so it's not an actual age thing. It's an attitude thing. And especially as even I get older, it is really important to me to keep my brain young. And I could certainly appreciate that, when you're married and, or you have a significant other, you got kids, that can really start to limit stuff. And, of course, they're all going to tell you that, oh, we don't discriminate on that. Well, they're lying. They are discriminating, but they can't say it out loud, or otherwise they'll get in trouble. Hang on, this just in. Okay. And, but I know people in their 60s and 70s who are young in their brain and they're young in their attitude. No, it doesn't mean you have to go drinking every night. But to have that flexibility of your time, of your physical geographical place, of your attitude of what you're doing. I mean, you want to scare me to death, especially in a small business, just say it's not my job. You get to say that once to me. And then I'm like, okay, that's your job. Cool, got it. Older people tend to lack enthusiasm. You young people, man, you got to give it to them. I mean, anybody under the age of 25 has lots of energy. And that energy shows up in a technical interview. That energy shows up in even in like their introductory statement on a resume, what they're looking for. And that's the big thing. Show energy. Be the gung-ho person. I, so that, to me, that's the important thing. Show that you've got drive. But Mike, it's just a little help desk job. Who cares? Be the company man. Be all that kind of stuff. Yeah, Mike hired me when I was in my, say, late 40s. Yeah, I regret it every day, Dave. I'm kidding. The other thing that drives me crazy is I'll get emails from people like, I sent out 25 resumes. It's like, so what? I hear people send out 200 resumes. And a lot of times it's not even the resume that gets the job. My last couple of legitimate jobs, I got sitting in either an airport bar for one. Where else did I get one? I was in a training class. And I was just in a training class, and I was talking to the teacher who's presenting on this particular topic. And I went up to the teacher. I go, look, dude, no offense, but I'm going to leave because I know all this. And the guy grabs me and says, hey, you want to get a job teaching? I'm not kidding. So, those are the big things. Does that help? Don't be afraid. In the dating world, let's face it, I have a lot of great qualities, but I'm not the prettiest person you ever met. But a bazillion years ago, if I saw a lady that I liked, I would ask her out for a date. Okay, I know things are changing a little bit, but then I'd have other friends that's like, oh, she'd never go out with you. I'm like, why don't we let her make that choice? And instead of just sitting in the corner and waiting for this gal, for me to self-choose that I'm not good enough for the gal, I'd just go up and ask for dates. And you know what? I got shot down a lot back then, a lot. But I ended up dating a lot of amazing, beautiful, dynamic, incredible women. Some of them are still friends today. And it's the same thing with you're looking for a job. You see a job out there, 3 years experience, and screw them. You get out there and you go for the job. Yeah, you're going to get shot down a lot. Who cares? You can print resumes all day long. Be fearless. And you get in there and go, oh, but sorry, you don't know. Well, let me tell you why it's not important in my case. And you can just do amazing stuff. And I know that's contrary to the classic nerd thing where you want to be a nerd. And I'm a nerd too. I'm kind of a higher functioning nerd. And it's hard to talk and stuff like that, but that's what works. Especially, who it works with more than anything else is other nerds. You come in all boom and dynamic and stuff like that and full of hustle. Come on, everybody who's listening to me right now can attest to what I'm about to say. How many times have any of you people bought something because it was a good salesperson? Admit it. I was in Salzburg, Austria, in this little Arabic place, and they were selling Arabic. It was a tourist trap. And the guy in there was like out of an old 1940s movie, and he's offering me tea. Come on, you guys have been through that. And the sales pitch was so good. I didn't want any of this junk, but man, it's just good. And because I'm a nerd, I just fall for a good sales pitch. You guys have done it too. And so you do the same thing. Turn the tables on them when you're getting those interviews or when people are turning you down. If they're turning you down in an email, then be dynamic in the email back. Don't be afraid. Okay, I'm going to get off the soapbox. But it's a big deal. Blaze Mao, what are your Blaze Mao? Guy, sorry, I butcher names. I apologize. What are your thoughts on building a router from parts or transforming an older computer when using something like pfSense versus simply buying one from the market? It would be a question of functionality. pfSense is a very powerful tool base upon which you can build a lot of great things. Won't argue that at all. But for a couple of $100, and especially if we're talking more the home router or small office router, I would be hard pressed to be able to match that. Now Dave Rush, because he loves his Raspberry Pi so much, there's Raspberry Pi. There's a Raspberry Pi distro that's actually a router, but it's not pfSense, right? Is pfSense really important, Blaze? Is it for some reason you really want to use pfSense? Because to me, I'd be using Linux. Convenience would be the answer. Convenience and making sure that you have the functionalities you need. And the other issue is time. People forget about this. Everybody's like, oh, parts are so cheap anymore. It's no big deal. If something breaks, just throw it away and buy a new one. Okay, well, that's true. But there is data, there is configuration, there's all kinds of stuff that still takes skill, whether it's a router or a new Windows laptop. It doesn't matter. And there is a cost for your labor. And so people want to spend sometimes inordinate amounts of time. This drives me crazy. Like somebody's the computer is broke for X reason, whatever it is. And you're like, well, it's either the power supply or it's the video card. I don't know. There's a certain point, and I call it my 70-30 rule. If I'm 70% sure that it's problem X, just do it. I've seen people spend days and weeks trying to diagnose systems or something like that, when the answer is the parts are cheap. It says your time is expensive. So the other thing I would add to that is, how much time do you have? And so that might be a criteria too. Now, the other thing I'm going to tell you right now, Blaze, it sounds like an extremely interesting project. So if this is something you're just doing at home on the side, brother, go for it, man. Just do it, because it sounds like fun. CIC, because it's cool. Do it. But if you're talking about work, I get a very different attitude. 70-30. If you've got whatever problem, whatever it is, a router, a system, or a toaster, and you've got a 70% confidence that it is problem X, just go ahead and fix it. Well, what if I'm wrong? Yeah, you're wrong all the time. It happens. What you'll do, though, is compared to the person who's trying to get to a 95% sure, you fix 4 or 5 systems, 4 or 5 problems to their one. Guess who keeps their job? Not him. Wow, I am on a roll today, huh? So I'm looking at Daniel Tinsley's response to his odds. Have you looked at digital media investigator with police forces? See, that's the stuff, because I'm not over in the UK. How about me and the guys fly over to the UK, we'll drive around for a week. Man, Scott, that doesn't sound like the worst idea ever. Run into some of our folks over there. Yeah, Andy STL, certainly another big one is connections with people you know in the field. Look, there is nothing wrong. I get 3 or 4 people a week straight up asking me for a job. Really ask. I know some of you guys goof with me, but it's an understood thing. You don't want to be a jerk about it, but you would say somebody you know. It's like, hey. And in fact, they don't even have to be in IT. Like if they're any kind of executive or managerial level at all, they probably know the IT people. You just ask, and you don't sit there and say, can you give me a job? You say, I would like to pursue working there. Could you connect me with the HR people? Or could we take the HR person out to lunch? Or do you know the IT guy? You just sit there. You're driving this. Do you understand? The connection you have, this personal connection you have, is simply opening a door. Do you understand the difference? And it's a terrible idea to go, I need a job, poor me. But if you just go in there, it's like, look, I'm really looking to work for your company. You're not saying I'm working for you or anything like that. Really, I'm looking at, company XYZ sounds kind of interesting. What some of the mousetraps they're building. I'm sure they have an IT department. Can I look in and get a job there? You'd be shocked how often that works. Andy STL, thank you very, very much for reminding me that one. That is a great one. Andrew Branch, you got it, kid. Oh, okay. Now I understand what you're saying, Blaze. I'm new to the field and heard about somebody who did this. Everybody at one time or another has built a router from something that ain't a router. I did it. like using old Linux desktop systems, and I'd snap 2 or 3 network cards in there, and God, what was it? It used to be called IP tables, using like IP chains and other built-in firewall features in Linux, and build stuff like that. And I mean, they work, but again, if you're trying to save money, I'm not sure. I don't know. But it sounds like it was fun. And hey, and Blaze, there's nothing wrong with pfSense. I've played with it. It's good. Holly Jackson's back. Good day, Mike. Good day, Holly. Did the kitty walk by? Where's Spewy? Okay. I didn't even see. The cat is like stealth cat. Tom, I'm not saying that it would be harder to get a job in the UK than the A+, with an A+ in America. All I'm telling you is that I know, like, even right now, remote jobs are in demand, that people here in the United States are looking for work in a big way. We had a question about getting work in the UK, and because I'm not there, I'm like trying to call up some of my connections I have over there, and the 3 people I spoke to, and asking them questions that I just thought would be pretty simple questions, like, does your school help people get jobs? And they start talking about counsel this and counsel that, and they just wouldn't straight up answer the question. In my life, when people dance around an answer to anything, it's because they don't want you to know what the real answer is. So that's all I'm saying. And we've got a number of UK folks on here who might be more helpful than me. I'm trying to get up to speed, and I'm just not there yet. Got to take a break of my go-go juice here. I feel refreshed. Yeah, Scott, you go back to the UK anywhere. Scott, if we go back to the UK, we got to go to Bovington Tank Museum. I just always wanted to go there. Blaze, to try to get hands-on, I tried to set up 3 VMs and use a 4th VM as a router, but I'm failing miserably with finding an ISO for routing OS. Man, Blaze, that's a big job, but sure, why not? I'll assume you got all the VMs working. That's half of it. So on that 4th VM, get any version of Linux. I've never tried pfSense in a VM. I'm not saying it can't happen. I've just never tried it. And every version of Linux out there has IP chains, and it's probably been updated. There's probably a bunch of them. Search for Linux-based routing software, routing utility, and you should have no problem being able to do that. Trick is, of course, when you got a lot of VMs, is that you've set up a VM, and let's say you're using VirtualBox. So you set that one VM up. It's only going to have one virtual network card in it, and you're getting into some fairly hairy configuration. Cool configuration. I've done it. It works. But a lot of times you're going to be dealing with a lot of port issues and things like that. But it's a big job. I'm curious, Blaze, why that is a particular thing you want. You really want to set up some routers. You might be stumbling on the fact that this might be your joy area. So Blaze, are you comfortable with like regular routers? Can you do like a basic Cisco router? You don't own one? Well, go get one, Here in the US, we just get on eBay, find some 5 or 6 year old router. It's probably an old 100 megabit router. It's got a couple of RJ45 ports in it, and just play with it, So, just something to think about. Yeah, Edmund, that is an issue. CompTIA pushes itself as this worldwide certification, and it's very spotty. It just depends on where you are. Here in the US, it has some good respect. In the UK, it has some good respect. In Germany, it's like nobody's ever heard about it. Like nobody. It's frustrating. But, it is an issue. If you're pursuing any certification, you should be looking in your own markets. Go online, see what What are they looking for jobs? Stuff like that. I'd love for everybody to buy all my A Plus and Net Plus and Security Plus training materials, but the reality is not everybody needs it. And then that becomes a matter of personal choice and knowing your market there. But Edmund, I'm going to challenge you a little bit. I sell a ton of books in India. Books. Get a lot. There's a bunch of folks in Bangalore is one area. God, I'm trying to think of names off the top of my head. I don't want to be a liar. David Smith, is PowerShell something worth learning? Yes. As a Windows system admin, absolutely. You'll live on it. I'm afraid I'll be left in the dust if I don't learn it and fluently. Nah, you really don't. You don't have to learn it fluently. Look, as an admin, that doesn't mean you're a programmer, right? But as an admin, what it does mean is that you're going to have to do a lot of work. And there are hundreds of thousands of pre-made PowerShell scripts out there that do everything from, quickly adding a bunch of users to, stopping and restarting a DHCP server or all kinds of stuff. There's trillions of them. And as an admin, you'll find yourself going to PowerShell all the time, not because you want to program in PowerShell, but because you got this problem and you want to find, you go up, look, whatever problem you have as a tech, somebody else has already had the problem. So the trick is to, don't you wish that person was right behind you? And especially as a Windows admin, there's a PowerShell script for everything. Windows has a big PowerShell script library. So what you're doing is you're like, oh, here's a PowerShell script library. Here's a PowerShell script that does 98% of what I want. But you have to be comfortable going into that script and changing, wherever it says domain name to your domain, or, number of users from, 100 to 225, or, wherever your registry setting is, or whatever it might be for your thing. So you're not writing PowerShell scripts, but you're tweaking the bejeezers out of existing ones to do what you need it to do. Yeah, Daniel, I'm a huge military history fan. Like way before World of Tanks came out, I was like, I don't be careful with the usage of the word recognized, but I was like one of the few people who knew, all these different types of tanks, World War I through early Cold War. And now with World of Tanks out, every 15-year-old out there become an expert on that stuff. Tanks, warships, what else? Aircraft. I'm pretty comfortable with all those. I've been to UK a number of times, but I've just never made it out to Bovington. Old Peculiar. Charlie Uebele, is Google IT certification worth getting? Charlie, I don't like to cut down other certifications. I don't hear about people getting these certs and moving forward. That's all I'm going to say. Remember, the goal of a certification is to get your name at the top of a stack of resumes. And maybe other people have an opinion on it, but I just haven't seen much of that. A lot of times what I'll see is in-house people will make it. You've already got a job and they add something, but I take that as you wish. How are we doing on time? It's 3:09. It just so happened that I read an article I had mentioned while I was reading the routing section of a network book for the boot camp I'm currently in. So you're doing a boot camp. No? Samuel Berger, would you say 2 weeks is an adequate amount of time to study for and pass as a new learner? So Samuel, it's not weeks or days, it's hours, all right? So for most people, I say it's about 120 hours of study, okay? Now, if you're a new person, that could go up to as high as maybe 220 hours. If you're a well-experienced person, I see you're not, it can be as low as 40, okay? So what you have to do is say, how many hours can you study per day, or however you want to split it up? You could work every Saturday, or, I don't know what you're doing. And then you use that as a relative gauge to say how long it is in days or weeks or months. Mm-hmm. Brendan S., what are home lab project examples for an A+, Net Plus student? Play with device manager until your fingers bleed. Play with disk management until your fingers bleed. Play with local users and groups until your fingers bleed. Download a copy of VirtualBox from Oracle and install 10 zillion virtual machines until your fingers bleed. Goof around with the 802.11 anywhere you can on your phone. If you got a home router, goof around with it until your fingers bleed. But I don't like to enumerate labs. McGraw-Hill actually makes us write a lab book, which is good. I like it. But I mean, if you're using any of my study materials, just use what I'm using. You know, this is the other thing that kills me, like device manager, right? Everybody's been in device manager, but how many times have you actually played with it? You know, just because you can open it up, you know, play with that thing. You know, how does it do it? How do you update drivers? How do you update drivers for one device? How can you update drivers for everything? Windows Update, you know, that kind of a thing. Can you go to another site and download a driver? I'm just talking about device manager here. Can you uninstall a driver and reinstall it? You know, stuff like that. But Mike, I might break my computer. Oh, yeah. While we're studying, if you don't, you know, end up having to reinstall Windows 4 or 5 times, you know, you're making a mistake. It's the nature of the beast. You've jacked with monitors. Can you grab a bunch of parts and recognize, you know, HDMI from mini HDMI from micro HDMI? You know, it's playing with them. The objectives are clearly listed. My training materials clearly list that kind of stuff. Just play. You guys got to remember, my idea of a fun night is playing with technology. I love it. That's like with Blaze talking about the talking about building routers. You know, is it going to be a tool that's going to get you there? Yeah, it actually will be. You know, because I rarely walk up to any problem at any level of IT and instantly know the answer. 95% of the time, I walk up to some situation and I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. All right? So, you know, Google is your friend, but you got to keep in mind, people are like, oh, well, Mike, you know all this stuff. No, I don't. Here's an old analogy. I used to have this guy who was a really good chef, and he went to the Culinary Institute of America. And I was like, dude, man, so you went to this Culinary Institute of America. You must have learned how to make all these delicious dishes and, you know, how to, you know, do all this stuff. And he goes, nah, all I did was pretty much learn how to chop. And now he's kidding, of course, but it was an important thing, and that was he went to school to learn the base skills so that he could use his creativity to make delicious things. Does that make sense? And so a certification or any of this just shows that you have the base tools that when you encounter a problem, you know how to deal with it. For example, if you see something you're like, oh, I might want to back up the registry. You know what a registry is. You know how to back it up. That doesn't mean you're an expert at the registry. Nobody's an expert at the registry. It's impossible. But you have those core skills that somebody's not having to explain to you what a registry is. You think you might have a bad hard drive. You know how to plug it in. You know how to set up its boot order. You know what I mean? You know how to go into disk management and you know, bring the drive online and partition and format it. That's a very important thing. Don't ever think that you're going to walk up to a situation and instantly know the answer. You will walk up to a lot of situations and have a pretty good idea coming out of the block what the problem is, but most of the time we have no clue. Most of the time it's a Google search. I got to tell you, the internet made being a technician a lot easier. I'll tell you right now. And you know, you do some searches because you're always trying to find the person who's already had that problem. You're always trying to find the person who's already had that problem. You want them to be virtually behind you as you deal with that same problem. That's always the case. So, yeah, so that's a lot more of an answer than you asked for, huh? Todd's Tech Hub. Can you give a story of a time you royally screwed up something at work, and what did you do to fix it? Sure. I got a bunch of those. I was working at the Texas Department of Transportation, the guys who build the roads, and they were, and they still do, you have to have actual paper printouts. Now, the paper printouts aren't used for anything anymore but archival purposes, but they create old school, they're not blueprints, they're white, but they're printed with blue paper. They have these huge plotters, and they print out these huge blueprints, which are signed by engineers and all this stuff. Anyway, I walked up to one of these plotters, and I thought it was stalled, that it wasn't doing anything, and I hit what I thought was a reset button, and basically it was a reset button. It was a factory reset, and it completely wiped the memory of the plotter, and the 2 gigabyte print job that was just waiting for some information was taken out, and I had a whole bunch of people staring at me, and I thought I was being helpful. Another time I was installing a bunch of routers into an old shack at a natural gas plant outside of Port Arthur, Texas. And this little closet, it used to be a bathroom, like back in the 70s. And so we're rerouting all this stuff, and we're running RJ45 all over the place, getting all this plugged in. And it's hot in Texas in the summertime. And I was like, we need water out here, like a water fountain, or at least just a faucet and a hose, because it was probably 400 yards back to the next place we could get a drink. And I'm like, hey, this used to be a bathroom. There's water lines. Oh, God. I think I tried to forget this. Anyway, so I think I've shared this story already. But yeah, so basically, and I'm pretty good at cutting pipe. So I went through it. I traced out an old water line. Here's a water line, da-da-da-da-da. And I tapped it into a water source, hit the water. Yeah. I ended up pouring thousands of gallons of water on all these routers and everything. It wasn't pretty. And what did I do? I cried. I said, I'm sorry, And the reality is, in our business, things like that happen sometimes. And it just happens. So you guys are talking about accounts. I'm going to assume, Elaine, you have a separate conversation here that's in good order, so I'm not going to worry about that. Yeah, generally, guys, if you're talking to somebody else, if you can do that at and then their name, and then I won't worry about those individual lines. Edmund again. Mike, what advice can you give a student second year of computer science bachelor's? Go get certified, because it's very difficult for a student to get an internship in real industry to gain experience. Really? Well, Edmund, so as a computer science bachelor's degree, you're going a programming degree. So you're not really going the hardware, light blue collar tech that things A+, Net+, at least get us started in. I am unfamiliar with programming certifications. I mean, Edmund, I'm assuming you want to be a programmer if you're going for a CS degree, right? And I know lots of people get CS degrees and do other things with it. Why would it be very difficult for a student to get an internship? Most schools should be helping you get jobs. Also, you should be talking to your professors and talking about, where is work available? There's CompTIA certifications would be helpful if you're choosing not to be a programmer. But it's tricky for me to answer that question. I should make you guys go, I live in this country, Edmund, you need to be looking around where you are, looking for what jobs are available. I mean, depending where you are, like here in the States, we got like 4 or 5 big websites that are dedicated to job locations, stuff like that. Here in the United States, we even have something called Craigslist, which has all kinds of jobs in it. Ridiculous. And people forget about it all the time. And see what people are looking for. You know? I have a friend of mine who got a job at the University of Houston. He had a computer science degree, and he's never written a line of code in his life. He just installs gazillions of Dell servers all day long. He loves it. And he has no certifications that I'm aware of. He's got some in-house Dell certs, but nothing generic. Brendan S., do you have to pay for a Windows 7 copy for VirtualBox? Honestly, at this point in the game, I wouldn't even bother with Windows 7. If you really wanted a copy of Windows, if you're studying for the A+ today, I think that the only two operating systems you need is Windows 10 and maybe Windows 7. I feel that the generic aspect of the questions that are currently on the CompTIA A+, you would be able to successfully get through the CompTIA A+ with just Windows 10, although Windows 7 would be nice. I do not think you need a copy of Windows 8 or 8.1. I would get on eBay. There's always somebody selling an old copy of Windows. Microsoft still might be doing that. Or you could just do a search, get on Google and type in download Windows 7 ISO. And as long as you don't keep it permanently installed, I mean, you're kind of in a gray area because you didn't pay for it, but as long as you're using it for educational purposes, Microsoft has proven many, many times that they're very understanding about that. Like for example, you know, if you have a copy of Windows 10, you can install it on a second machine. You can. Nobody knows you can do it. You can do it. It's legal. Check out, read it. You know, it's they got a lot of rules that Microsoft is very, very easy about a lot of that stuff. But yeah, you got Ubuntu. Yeah, so you're just going to set up another virtual machine on your VirtualBox with Windows 7. Lots of it. Elaine, what are you asking? You're telling people stuff. Partitioning, types of partitions. Oh, I think I know what you're talking about. Brendan S., there you go. Okay, I understand now. I'm happy. Unbearable suffering. Good to see you again. You guys are talking among each other. Yeah, Elaine, Microsoft most certainly has trial versions of all of their current operating systems, but I don't know if they'd have a Windows 7. Man, you guys are doing good here. Oop, here they come. Once again, I start scrolling really slowly and then I get a bazillion more. Holly Jackson, you got a total tester, which are practice questions, and the all-in-one exam guide, which is a book. So no, you did not duplicate. One is a book, one is practice questions. To me, the ultimate triumvirate of success for any certification, not just CompTIA certs, is a book, videos, and practice questions. To me, those are the three things that one should have in order to successfully pass. Does everybody need all three of those things? Nope. But I know that I've been doing this now for 25 years, and I can't prove it, but I'm pretty sure that I am personally have gotten more people through CompTIA certifications than anybody else. I can't prove that. And I've learned a long time that those are the three things people need. Can you do it with just videos? Yes. Can you do it with just a book? Yes. Can you do it with just practice questions? Yes. But for me to, increase the chances of you being successful, that's what I'd recommend. Oh. All right, so Holly, Scott Jernigan is telling me something different than what I'm reading here. So you got the total sims to go with her book and the practice test. Oh. It doesn't make any sense. I'm not aware that we sell the book and practice tests. We used to have a CD-ROM in the back of the book, but you're still doing better because the total SEMs are online and we keep those updated a lot more. So you're okay. So Elaine, you like the acronyms in the book? Yeah, they're good. I think my only problem with the acronyms in the back of the objective list, and guys remember, not just CompTIA, but all certifications have these objectives lists, and which basically says, here's what we're going to test you on. And CompTIA is no exception to that. They have theirs as well. And on their objective list, the CompTIA ones, they have the back, they have an acronym list. You know, my only problem with the acronym list is I feel that they leave a lot of stuff in there that they forget to delete, especially older technologies. Now, some people will argue that they leave those old acronyms in there as wrong answers for the test. I don't know. But they can be helpful. Elaine, I'll agree. Elaine, that'll be one of our topics we can argue over. Network Mage. I come from careers where there's lots of internal politics and personality conflicts. Made the job hard to do. Are there jobs in IT where I can avoid people? Yeah, sure, to some extent. You got to remember the number one reason a computer fails is because somebody touched it, though, right? Depot tech jobs, you know, here in the States we have a lot of depot techs. You got a Dell laptop that breaks. So if the Dell laptop breaks, if you have an expensive warranty, they'll have somebody come out to fix it. Here in the States, those jobs are almost impossible to get because Dell is infamous for bringing folks in internationally, which is good for them. But you meet some guy from like the Philippines with a master's in computer science. It's crazy. But the depot techs are kind of a different game. And other than maybe talking to a customer and make sure you understand what the problem is, there's lots of companies here in the States. Certainly, I would assume that's people are getting computers fixed. Where people ship their computers off to get fixed, or where people walk in and drop their computer off to be fixed. Those kinds of places. Holly Jackson, AMA stands for Ask Mike Anything or Ask Me Anything. It comes from a website called Reddit. I'm not a big fan. Andrea Branch, OMG, what did I do? Internships aren't as prevalent as they used to be. Yeah, I agree. Like we used to have internships at Total Seminars, but we kind of quit doing it. Not that I'm against internships, but God, I'm gonna hate to say this because you guys are gonna laugh at me. I found it morally wrong to do unpaid internships. It bothered me. But we did it for a short time, and then so now we just hire people. See, now here's the thing. So yeah, now Holly, you got to be careful because we got a lot of folks from all over the world on here. So it really depends where people are from. But this is an important thing. Holly Jackson says, she's talking to Edmund, not difficult to get internship through your school. That's what I did. So Holly, you're right. This is to me always a big deal, is that I would never, ever go to a school to get anything that, maybe a bachelor's degree, a four-year university maybe, but anything else, any type of IT school, secondary school, anything like that, I would, before I'd even join, I go, how are you on job placement? And so, yeah, it really is, yeah, and so Edmund's in India, so that is always a bit of a challenge. Uh-oh, I saw the word crap. Nigel, Windows 8 is crap. Yes, Windows 8 was crap. I knew what you meant. Freya, Laura, you are the best. I hope you're directing that to me. Thank you very much. How are we doing on time? Oh, it's 3:30. We're going to start We need to talk about volume shadow copies. Holly Jackson, Mike, can you help me understand the difference between WPA2 Personal and WPA2 Enterprise? Sure, we can knock that out real quick. Let's log on to my router here at my house. So I have a router which is also a wireless router, so it means it's a router and it's a wireless access point too, okay? So the whole idea between WPA2 Enterprise and WPA2 Personal Shared Key all goes down to the original 802.11x. I think that was the thing. It was almost 20 years ago they came up with an improvement on 802.11 called 802.11x. And the idea was that if you think about this, for most people, when they access a wireless access point, you just need a key, right? Right? So, hey, what's the SSID's key, right? What's the password for the wireless? You've heard people say that. That's a personal shared key. But and that's when they say PSK, that's what they mean, personal shared key. So I go into my router, can we do this? Is this going to work? All right, let me make this a little bit bigger so you guys can see it. Okay, so here I am going to, what is it on here? Okay, so you look at one of my SSIDs here. It's called WPA2 PSK. And then you see where it says password. Click here for details. That's where I type in that key. And so I type in, you know, Mike loves everybody all the time. I like really long passwords. So I type that key in when I'm setting up that wireless network, okay? And once that's set up, if anybody wants to get onto my wireless, I have to tell them what the SSID key is. That's what PSK stands for, okay? There's a whole other way to do it that you almost never see in anything other than pretty aggressive enterprise environments, and that's called WPA2 Enterprise. So, am I going to be able to show this to you guys without... Oh, shoot, there was a setting right up there. Hang on. I was in the right spot. My router always takes a while to switch over. Bear with me. Chunka, 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 chunka. Okay, Wi-Fi. Okay. So I have a network name called NSA VAN 2.4. So what I want to do here, here's my password. And I'll be changing that. This is a little bit ugly. So this isn't any, this is boring. I'm going to have to abort on that. My home router doesn't have this other form of WPA2 called Enterprise. You'll also see it called WPA2 Radius. What they're talking about here is a authentication methodology that usually requires a username and password. So you're used to typing in just like an SSID with PSK, but if you go into a wireless network that's configured with WPA2 Enterprise, you'll have to type in a username and a password at a minimum. WPA2 Enterprise uses a number of authentication methodologies from TLS to TTLS to all these different things. You can set them up that requires certificates to be installed on the wireless access points. You can set it up that every laptop, every little device that wants to get on has to have its own certificate. But most people just use a username and password, and it requires what's called a radius server. So the radius server is another box somewhere in your wired network. So you set your wireless access points up with the IP address of that radius server. And that radius server is running special authentication software. There's one funny, it's called Steel Belted Radius. But so they install it, and you can either type in your own users and your own passwords into that system, or it can use the domain controller. your username and password to log on to your wireless, to your Windows system, you will rarely see WPA2 Enterprise. You'd have to be with a pretty big company. A lot of times you'll see people like they'll have a special laptop and they have to slide a card in. That's often for that type of authentication because it can use smart cards. It's a much more aggressive thing. It's a very much an enterprise level thing. You're not using a $200 wireless access point. In that case, you have a constellation of wireless access points that are all over the office, that are wired into a central network on their own VLAN, and you've got a Radius server that's running all the time, a box, a computer, a rack that's sitting there, one computer that does nothing more than authenticates for wireless clients. And it's a very big deal. The only thing on a CompTIA exam you'd ever have to know is that if you set up WPA2 Radius, you would have to know the IP address of the Radius server. And I'm assuming you'd be the person setting up that Radius server, so you know what IP address you gave it, or at least you would call the people and say, what's the IP address of the Radius server? Did I answer your question? I hope. Oh yeah, Andrea, thank you. I'm always in a panic when somebody types in, oh my God. I was like, did I say something wrong? Yeah, you know what? I'll tell you what, anybody's welcome to come over to my house and get on my Wi-Fi. You are welcome. Oh, Holly, you're taking CWNP. Oh, what is his name? Devin? The guy who invented CWNP. He actually asked me to write a book for him, and I couldn't do it. It's one of my few failures in book writing. Devin Akins. Used to hang out in his basement. Yeah, you got to keep in mind, Holly, for somebody who ever wants to actually really configure WPA2 Enterprise, that's a whole other level. I mean, WPA2 personal shared key is nice because you go into your wireless router or your wireless access point, whatever you have, as you're setting up the SSID, you set it to WPA2 and then you type in some magic phrase, right? And then you're done. And anybody who wants to get on, you got to tell them the key. That's it. So it's very convenient. With Radius, you are installing a Radius server. I mean, Radius server software is thousands of dollars. You've got a box. It's probably running Windows. It might be running Linux. Then you install this Radius software on top of that box, and you got to configure it all up and set up users and maintain it. And, Microsoft used to have a built-in Radius server. Well, it's not built-in. It's a separate product now. It's called IAS, Internet Authentication Server, IAS. I'm not sure if that still exists. But it's a huge deal. I got to tell you, one of the few times, I'm pretty good at configuring almost anything, but one of the few times I was in the middle of something and I'm like, this was setting up a Radius server. They're surprisingly challenging to set up. Afka Patel, how many questions should I do to prepare for the A+ exam? All of them. You do as many as you possibly can. Our A+ test bank has around 1,000 questions in it, and every one of them is good. If you have a limited number of practice questions, then you create your own practice questions. I got to tell you, man, if you wanted to say one thing that would really prove to me you knew a topic, is that if you could write questions. That's the real test, you know? Somebody said once, the proof that you know a foreign language is your ability to tell jokes in that language. Your ability to know about any technical topic is your ability to write questions. So you grab all you can. You know, the other big thing that people run into is that, like, they'll buy my practice questions, which is great. Thank you. I appreciate that. But I often don't think that's enough. Practice questions, like a novel, has a voice to it. And people, like, they'll buy my practice questions, which is great. And I work very hard not to do this, but I'm sure I still do. And that is, I have a voice to the questions. So when you're actually sitting down to take the real exam, the questions sound different in your head. And you're like, oh, Mike's questions are terrible. No, it's just a little bit of a different voice to the questions. And if you take your time and read it. So a lot of times if you have a secondary source of questions that's written by somebody else, it gives it a different voice so that when you walk into an exam, you're not locked into one particular voice. The other thing about practice questions you got to be careful about is that none of my questions that I have as practice questions are actual questions from the CompTIA, any of them. So if you think you're getting actual CompTIA questions from me, you're not. But I will tell you this, if I have a question that says 2 plus 2 equals 4, you better be studying up on what's 4 minus 2. You know what I mean? I write them pretty as close as I can without CompTIA getting mad at me. Okay, guys, I'm going to probably put a moratorium on the questions because I want to take a few minutes and talk about, what do I want to talk about? I forgot. Volume shadow copy, all right? In fact, volume shadow copy is a terrible word. Anyway, NTFS file system, which is the file system of Windows, is a very, very good file system. It has lots of groovy features. But one place it's a little weak in is in the ability to track versions of things. That's just one aspect. And generically, we call this copy on write, COW. And copy on write goes way beyond versioning. I'm not trying to limit it to that, but it is a way. I gotta think about how I'm gonna say this. It's been a while since I talked about this. Let's just talk about versioning. Like, so you have a Word document, okay? And if you make changes to that Word document, there are situations where sometimes you go, I wish I could go back to an earlier version of that Word document or a database or whatever. And NTFS never really had that ability until Windows XP. And it got this copy on write feature. But the problem is if I'm changing a document, well, wouldn't I have to make 2 copies of the document? And if I change it again, wouldn't I need 3? And wouldn't that be wildly wasteful of the space, of my storage space? And the answer is yes, it would be horribly wasteful. We don't want to do that. But what we do instead is we use what's called the Volume Shadow Service, or VSS, which has been built into pretty much every copy of Windows for a long, long time. What that does is that if you have it turned on, and they call it file history in Windows, if you turn that on, it will save changes to a very special area which manifests as a folder on your system. And it allows you to have versioning. So what I've got here is I've got my Windows 10 system. I'm literally talking on it. I'm going to warn you right now. There is a 0.05% chance that as I demonstrate this, that I will knock down my system and this AMA will end a little early, which is part of the reason I wanted to wait till the end. I've done this a bazillion times on other systems, and from time to time we run into a problem. So what we're going to be talking about first of all is we're going to get to volume shadow copy is just the function of doing this copy on write. Volume shadow copy doesn't really mean anything. It's volume shadow service, which is a service that's running on your Windows system, and we're about to turn it on. So in order to make this really work right, you have to have some kind of external storage. You can use a thumb drive. I've got this big old, I think it's like about an 8 terabyte drive, and I'm plugging it into my system. Maybe you heard it go dinkety dink dink. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to light this up. All right, let me get this all set up. Okay, you guys need to see this too, right? Okay. Okay, here we go. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm down here at the bottom. I'm going to type in file history. There, that'll get me there. You go to backup settings. Can you guys see that? Let me get that over so you can see a little bit better. All right. So this is under settings, and I just went here to backup, and here I am. All right. So in order to light all this up, and really what I'm doing here, folks, is I'm turning on volume shadow service. I'm enabling it. And this is how you do it. So the first thing you got to do is add a device. So hopefully it's going to find my old Seagate here. I'm going to get a big drink of water while you guys can't see me. Cool. So here's the Seagate Backup Plus drive. So I'm going to turn that on. And by default, it says automatically back up my files. What I've just done is I have enabled the volume shadow service. I've turned it on. And the volume shadow service manifests in actually a lot of ways. This is one way it manifests, and this is through what's called file history. So now that this is on, I can go ahead and make copies of stuff. So let me, I'm going to minimize that. So, hang on. I'm going to create a document real quick. New Microsoft Word document. I'm going to call him Timmy. Leave it here on the desktop. And now let's let you guys see what I'm doing. All right, so here's Timmy, which I've just created. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to open them up. Do a save. Okay. Now I'm going to close it. Now, watch what happens when I right-click on this guy. So I'm going to go down to Properties. You can't see it, but it's there. Down to Properties. And you'll see I have a thing that says Previous Versions. And you can see how there are no previous... Okay, well, fine. All right, let's try again. So I'm going to edit it one more time. Let me close Word. All right. See, this is, okay. Okay. The volume shadow service has been working on Windows for a long, long time. And the way it works changes every time. And this is why I didn't want to talk about it. So I've turned on file history, but the volume shadow service does a lot more than file history. It's also used as a backup, okay? Not only is it used as a backup, it's going to be used as a restore point. I'll explain the problem in just one sec. So like here under restore points, all these restore points these are also volume shadow copies. So there, it successfully made a restore point. By doing this, you can do some pretty amazing things. The reason it didn't work is I have to run one full backup on my system before file history kicks in. Sorry about that. And I'm too lazy to do that in front of the screen. That's the only reason it didn't work. So if I run the full backup, and it will do this, okay? So let me make sure I'm not lying anything there for restore points. Okay, so in order for it to work with Windows 10, you have to have an external source. You have to have like an external hard drive. You have to have a thumb drive. Technically, you could put it on optical media, although I can't even imagine doing that. And you have to turn it on for each individual volume on your system. So just because I have file history turned on for my C drive, that D drive I have in there, it's not going to work. I have to turn it on for each one of these. Once it's turned on, I also have to make sure that it's turned on for every user. Otherwise, just because I set it up for me, if we log off on this computer and I log in as Timmy, whatever, he won't have it. He'll have to go into the same place I just did and turn on file history, okay? Now, once all this is up and running, this part better work. I don't want you to see my messy drive. I'm just trying to get to the C drive real quick. Okay, this part worked, yay. So once you've turned, once you've turned all this on, in the root directory of whatever volume you have in there, you'll have a new folder called Recovery. Now, I actually had this turned on and I turned it off for this class, so that's why it has an older date on it. And you go in here there's not really much, you can't really do anything in there. As a matter of fact, wait a minute, I think I'm lying to you. View. I got to turn on see everything. There it is, options. View, show hidden files, and then I have to unhide. It doesn't like it when it. Okay, so what I just did is I said show hidden files and also show system files. Here we go. That's it, system volume information. And if you double click on it, you get an error. You can't get into it. Got too many monitors. So by turning on file history and then running my first initial backup, it backs up the whole system. Now well, hold on, that's a lie. It's going to back up all of my personal information. So anything in the Mike users folder, that's going to be my documents, my desktop, all that stuff. That's going to be backed up. It doesn't back up your programs or Windows itself or any of that type thing. Now, if I want to run a regular backup, let's get backup up. Okay, here we go. This is the part I have to do in order to make everything work. There we go. So what I've done is I've gone back into settings. I'm under backup. Here's where we were before. I go into more options. And at this point, I don't have any backup. So the secret to making this work is I actually have to run a backup. I'm going to go ahead and run it. Class will probably end before it's backed up. But we'll go ahead and get that backup going. And it shows you what you're backing up. So basically you can see it's always Mike, 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 Mike. It's backing up everything in the C:\users \Mike folder. It's going to be my documents, my photos, videos, any virtual machines. If that's where when I install VirtualBox, I usually put my VMs in there. Boy, that's going to really make it go a long time. Those are huge files. But what it's going to do, and it's doing it right now, it creates those backups. Once this first backup is done, then, and only then, I can go ahead and my file history will start working and all that. Maybe it'll back up quickly, and we'll see what happens. I've never done this, but you can do it via a network. But what Microsoft really wants you to do is they want you to back it up to the cloud. And that can be a little bit frustrating. So they're saying you don't need a hard drive, just back it up to the cloud with your OneDrive account. The downside to that is that the OneDrive is up to 1 gigabyte, which you'll eat that space up. And then all of a sudden now you got to pay them $99 a year for an Office 365 account. So they're making money on you. Cloud backups take forever. On a really busy system, that first backup can take weeks. Weeks, kids. Now, it'll if you shut off the computer or anything, it'll pick right back up and keep doing the backup. But that initial backup can take forever. If you're on a metered internet connection, that can be wildly expensive. You'll probably end up having to pay for cloud. So I don't like backing a cloud. I would rather just buy an external hard drive. Now, me and Michael Smyer got into a big argument on this, and he brought up some very good points. He's like, Mike, if you own a Windows desktop system, then you own Office. Why would you not have Office? So you probably already got Office 365, so you have a much bigger online storage. Why not take advantage of that? Because I like control and I'm a control freak, that's why. But anyway, so what's taking place here is that backup, which is all of your personal information, is being stored in that system volume information, that hidden folder in the root directory of C. And if I want to, I could restore if I wanted to. Shoot, it's not going to show me. Let me show you what it's not showing me so you can at least see it. So I'm waiting for that first backup to happen. So I'm not going to be able to see anything right now. But all I did is I went into and I said restore from backup, and this came up. Okay. So what takes place is that the volume shadow copy is not only allowing for file history, it's not only allowing for one version of backup, which basically backs up your personal information, but you can also back up your entire system. Geez, I gotta remember where to do this. This is so frustrating. I got to finish this backup first before I can show you. Anyway, you can actually restore from that backup. Now that backup actually, it backups everything. About the only thing it doesn't back up is like your swap file. And it does everything. So you have two very separate types of backups, kind of like a personal backup. And then what it'll do is it will be, it's not showing. This is so frustrating. Hold on. Okay, let's take a look right here. Let me bring this up for you. So the other thing we can do, I'm just leaving this right in the background, is we can actually create a recovery drive. And that is the backup of everything. So that backs up the whole thing. The only thing that's interesting, and this is kind of a Windows 10 thing, is that you've now really backed up your entire computer, right? So you've backed up all your personal stuff, and you've backed up all of Windows and everything. But if you want to get Windows back, you have to restore from this recovery drive. And by the way, these recovery drives are bootable. So like you say, you really smoke your system out hard, you can just take that drive, whatever it is, put that in the beginning of your boot order, boot to it, and it'll reinstall Windows. Once Windows is reinstalled, and you go back in a second time and you do a restore of your personal information. So you have this two-step restore process. And that's great. But you got to keep in mind, these are full backups. So if you want to do like incremental or differential or anything like that, some of the old school type of backups, then you can do what's called backup and restore Windows 7. Let me show that to you guys. So this is in the control panel. This isn't under settings. So I go to backup and restore Windows 7. Here, I can just... There we go. Good old school control panel. And then right here is this option, backup and restore Windows 7. Now, hang on. The reason they leave, this is like the old-fashioned backup. The reason they leave this in is because some people really like it. This is where you would go to do like an incremental or a differential backup. The new VSS-based backup, there's no incremental or differential. It's all volume shadow copies, and you just restore on what you got. And it's based on whatever your last one was. Now, the other thing that's actually kind of cool about that is that you also have, you ready? Don't forget, we have a restore point. Remember, a restore point should only be used when like you're installing a new piece of software. Or some people do it when they're installing a new piece of hardware. You're getting ready to do something, and you're like, if this blows up, I want to get back to it. With a restore point, you're not talking about a trashed Windows system. You're talking about a Windows system that some application, some driver, some small aspect of it isn't working. So a restore point is also a volume shadow copy, okay? And the only big difference to this guy is that with a system restore point, you can access it through your Windows recovery console, your recovery environment. So you can use that same disk where you made your big system backup. You can boot off of that, and part of that is says, recover my restore point. So it reinstalls everything and then gets you back up to that same point. So that's just pretty cool. And yes, you still have to go through and reinstall your personal information, but at least it's all kind of built into it. Is it good? Yes. Restore points, and this brings up the issue I always had with restore points, and that is Restore points are only as good as you back them up. So by default, I never remember this. I actually left this up so I'd remember. Bear with me. I'm pulling up a web page because I can never remember exactly. So you can make your own system restore point, which is good, but they're also generated automatically. And I have to go to a web page because I can never remember when are they automatically set up. Windows will automatically create a system restore point when a program is installed, and that's assuming that the program's installer tool is compliant with system restore. You would be shocked how many aren't. So that's why I still do my own manual restore points before I install a big piece of software. Anytime Windows Update installs an update, creates a restore point. Anytime a driver is updated, but again, it's contingent on the people who are installing the driver to tell it to make a system restore point. So I still manually, especially if I'm using like video card drivers, I'll put that in. And which is interesting, anytime you execute a system restore. I thought that was kind of cool. Now then by default, so there's another time with Windows 7, 8, and 10, it will make a restore point every 7 days if no other restore points exist over that time frame. So let's say for some reason you didn't make a restore point in 7 days, Windows will automatically just make one. Boom, it makes a restore point. So restore points are good, but you got to remember, restore point is not going to rebuild a Windows system from scratch, right? You're going to have a backup that you've already made, which means you have an external hard drive. And I guess you can use cloud if you want. You would boot off that drive. It would bring up Windows. And then and then you'd hit R for repair my computer. And at one point it would say recover from a restore point. And it will use the backup. The backup will install everything. Then it'll look at the restore point. And then whatever's different from your backup, it'll automatically put that in. Pretty cool, right? And then, now you've got Windows up and running again. Then you go in and you do another restore of your personal information. And this is all done under volume shadow copy. If for some reason you want to do it old school, maybe you like doing incremental or differential backups or something like that, Microsoft still has good old backup and restore Windows 7, which is the very old school, kind of old-fashioned backup utility. And it works like a regular old school backup utility. It ignores the volume shadow copy. It uses the archive bits and all that stuff and does the backup that way. You use it when you need to. So there we go. Okay. Are there any questions? Oh, it's 4:03. I'm still talking, aren't I? Sorry, Scott. All right. I'm not in a huge panic. I got to finish the story here. Yeah, a little tiny bit of overtime. Okay, well, I don't see any questions, so I guess I did a good job. Yay for me. Yay. Andy STL, if you're having any kind of problems, you need to contact Kathy Yale. Let me give you her address. I don't know how to fix anything in terms of this coupon didn't work, or I didn't get my product, or you're overcharging me, or I can't log on. I don't know the answers to any of those questions. I don't know. But I'm the boss of Kathy Yale, so I can yell at her. I've sent her an email, and Andy, you need to contact her because I don't know. So I'm sorry. I'm surprised I missed 2 of your emails. I apologize for that. Oh, and that's right, guys. Remember, we have a special thing tomorrow. Tomorrow at 2 o'clock, Dave Rush is going to be doing the Raspberry Pi. If you're on my LinkedIn, you already know about this, but for those of you who don't, this is a one-time special deal where Dave Rush is going to be talking about the Raspberry Pi and how it can be used as a tool to learn a whole bunch of stuff about CompTIA A+ and Net+. People complain they don't want to spend $1 gazillion on a box where you can spend, I don't know, how much is a Raspberry Pi these days? $14 or whatever it is. You can do a lot of stuff very inexpensively and in a very pretty way with the Raspberry Pi. So Dave is going to be doing this at 2 o'clock tomorrow. That'll be 2 o'clock Central Daylight Time and right here on the Total Seminars channel. We're looking forward to that. I will try to log in, but we'll see what I can do. But other than that, yeah, we are running a little bit behind, so I have got to cut this off. I hope I was helpful on volume shadow copy. When that backup's done, if you remind me on Friday, I'll actually show you file history working. It's just the backup's still running, so I gotta let you go. Don't forget about we have all of our special deals. Andrea, it's on this channel. It'll be right here. And I will see you guys on Friday, and I'll probably be logging in tomorrow as part of the day. So until then, this is your little Uncle Mikey saying good night. Good night.